I always really enjoy the conversations that I have with Carson Hill. In fact, I had him on the show probably a month and a half ago, and he's back on the show today. And the reason for that is that, as most of you guys probably know if you follow the show, I really like to learn about people's processes. And Carson is very open and honest about his processes, what worked, what didn't work. He loves to iterate, try new things, test things until they fail, and then figure out how they failed, why they failed, and make the corrections there. And I just love the kind of back and forth that we end up having on machines and tattoos and technology and all that type of stuff. I really was not into machines for the vast majority of my career. I'd say the first 15 years, I just kind of used machines as they were and didn't think much about them. And over the last few years, I've really become pretty interested in both coil and rotary machines and how they work and dampening systems and what those types of things mean. And so if you haven't seen the series of episodes that we've done with Carson over the last couple of years, you should really go through and check them out because I learned a lot through that series. In fact, we're in the process of putting all of those episodes into deep dive pages that will be organized and ordered on our website on firesidetattoo.com. So the purpose of today's episode really is that Carson has some big news in the world of Neuma. He is about to release the Neuma 5. In fact, it's probably out by the time that you're watching this. And I really was just curious what the changes were, what the updates were. I'm very happy with the Neuma 4. I have both the macro and the original Neuma 4 version 1. And I really love those machines. And I was curious what he might do to one-up those or to make improvements, or why he felt it was necessary to build the next model of this machine right now. So we talked a good bit about that. The conversation was interesting. I learned a lot about some of the struggles along the way of trying to really be an innovator in the rotary tattoo kind of space. So I'm excited for you to check out the episode and let me know what you think. Really quickly before we get started though, this episode is brought to you by us, the Fireside Tattoo Network, and in particular, I'd like to highlight the Inside Fireside Tattoo Club and welcome our newest members to the Tattoo Club. Brandon McKeever, Donald Morrison, and Carolina Alonzo all joined at the end of September, and I'm excited to meet you guys and do some drawing and critiques and just talk tattoos, talk art. If you'd like to learn more about the Inside Fireside Tattoo Club, I will leave a card on this screen somewhere, and let's go ahead and get to the episode. Outside of just your like desire to keep coming up with new and better things, like did you feel that there was a need, something that wasn't being met with between the Neuma 4, the macro, the different variations of that? If you saw some shortcomings, like where were they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with the modus and the macro, which so first of all, I would start by saying that the Neuma 4. So now the way that we have it like separated on the website is we have the Gen 1, which is first generation, then we have the modus and the macro. And for those who've already been paying attention, they'll know all of this information. But basically, to summarize, they're all the Neuma 4. The Gen 1 is just the first one that we did. There's technically one that's missing from that we don't do anymore, but it is the Gen 1 just without some of the little modifications that we made. And then the modus and macro came around the same time, and the only real idea behind the modus, or the difference between the modus and the Gen 1, was the ergonomics. And really the idea behind that was just so that the macro and the modus are using the same parts. And really it was about grips, because the macro is a little bit longer because it has a bigger motor in it, and we didn't want people to have to, well, for a couple of reasons. We don't want to have to stock, we already have 5 different shapes and colors and all this crap, so we don't want to stock infinite number of grips for 2 different machines. So we figure having one grip that works with both machines benefits not only the customer so that they can switch between the two, but also us and how we keep all of that. So so when it comes to those machines, we have worked really hard to, along the way, there's been some hiccups and some shortcomings and stuff like that we have addressed. And at this point, we have it to the point where we're confident in that design, and we're not really making changes on that anymore. Those ones are pretty dialed in, and the little hiccups that we have had with them have been sorted out. Nothing is perfect. There's still going to be wear and tear, and there's still room for improvement everywhere, but uh, we're happy with that design, and we've got it locked in as tight as we think we can. Um,
Yeah.
but
The
there,
big thing to I was going to say the thing that made the biggest difference to me, and I have both the Gen 1 and the macro. The increase of the size of the dial for the needle depth setting, especially if you're using a battery on the back on the Gen 1, you kind of had to find it. You get in there and find it,
yeah.
and the bigger dial was really a great upgrade in my mind.
Yeah, and that was one of the shortcomings from the Gen 1. And even with the macro version now, it is improved from the Gen 1, but it is still not perfect, and that is, I would still call that one of the shortcomings that we have addressed with the new machine, because it's not that it's, so basically it's just that when you have, here's one sitting here, right? So when you have the battery, um, you're limited to this much space to do your adjustment, which is not that challenging. And as you can see here, it's decent amount, but compared to the original version, that is much bigger, and the original version was even more difficult. And if you had a lot of throw, that means that part was even deeper into the grip, and so there was less to work with, and you're like using your pinching to try and adjust, and it could have been, that was one of the challenges, or one of the design, let's say, shortcomings. And some of the other ones were, there's the pin, there's the little pin inside that stops the cam from spinning. So you have, the cam has these little teeth around the outside. It looks like a gear, but it's not. And the whole purpose behind that is a pin fits between two of those teeth and stops it from rotating and causes it to only go up and down. So now that pin is a 1 millimeter diameter pin, and if that pin comes out or comes out of alignment, it can either stop the function of the machine or negatively impact the function of the machine. So what we have done with the Modus and the Macro and the Gen 1 now is we are making all the bodies out of steel so that we can laser weld the pin to the body itself. And that was even a learning curve. Like, we started with just a little tack weld at the top of the pin to the wall of the body. And even we were still having some issues with that. So we ended up finding a way where basically we're triple welding that at the top and then a weld at the bottom, just to keep everything in place. And we haven't had any failures with that. So that's what I mean by we're confident with that design. It's functioning better than it was. And even that, we were having probably a 1 to 2% return rate from those pins coming out. Some of them, after a year of hard use, they'll come out. Which, so I wouldn't necessarily fault the design for standing up for only a year, but it's frustrating for an artist to have to send in a machine. And again, we warranty all this stuff, but sending in a machine, being without your machine, having to wait for it to come back, spending the money to mail it, and this kind of stuff, it's just something I would like to eliminate, just for that one little tiny pin. I mean, it's such a pain in the ass, to be honest. So
Yeah.
there was that. There's also by the way, this is like a little prototype we're working on, where a true grip slides over that and kind of fills the gap here, so that you kind of get that
Okay.
cushy thing without having to go over a bulge in the grip.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, so one of the other things is when you're bagging it, this second O-ring here, that's the purpose of that, was to hold the bag. And then we discovered there's just not enough space between the grip and that for the bag to get in there and for you to easily adjust it. So we ended up adding this O-ring here, but that can be a similar issue because it still needs to go into the grip at times. So that was another kind of a shortcoming. I mean, it's a minor thing because there are other ways to bag, but at the same time, the purpose of the O-ring, is kind of not, it's not being utilized because of that design.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to mention one thing that I forgot to mention in the intro. If you do decide to pick up a Neuma 4 or a Neuma 5, you can get yourself a discount by using the code Fireside at checkout, and that throws a little bit back to us as well, which helps us keep this channel going. Okay, back to the episode.
And then
You had put out a video on the way that you bag, and it is kind of I don't remember it that well. I don't bag the same way that you do. I don't think that, but it was kind of a double bag, right? You have one bag that
yep,
that sleeves the clip cord or the battery, and then a secondary bag that slides
yep,
over
like over the
the
grip, right?
grip. Right.
And the grips are autoclavable, so if you choose to do it that way, then you wouldn't necessarily have to bag. But I think a lot of people prefer to bag it and not have to go. A lot of shops don't even have autoclaves these days because everything else is disposable, and so there's really not a need for them. And there's
Right.
again, you can cold sterilize it, and then some people don't bag their grip at all, and just. But I think a lot of people are just not comfortable with that. Even if you are
Yeah.
sterile.
Yeah. I don't. I own an autoclave, but it's not connected, and I haven't used it in a while. It's in storage. But what I've been doing for the last couple of years is wiping it down, and then I have a little box that is a UV sterilizer that it actually came with another machine with the AI tinnitus machine, but it fits all pen style machines. You can buy the box like separately from the machine. I think it's like $100, and it's 3 minutes or something like that, and it just snaps right in. It has like 20 some odd UV whatever lasers, lights, and sterilizes. Some of them run down into the opening for the cartridge and expand out. It's pretty cool. I've never I'd love to like take it somewhere where people can test how effective it actually
Yeah,
is, but
that would be
I don't
my
know.
question. Yeah, I don't know enough about the technology to even know which questions to ask, but
Right.
effectiveness would be my question. My biggest question. But
Mhm.
yeah, I actually saw your video on that, and I think that thing is pretty interesting. If it does what it says it does, then that's pretty cool.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I thought so. I mean, I think the machine overall, I think is a solid machine just for all around. But the thing that stood out the most to me was definitely that little sterilization
Mm,
case. Pretty cool.
cool. And then some of the other things like okay, so the there's a spring, right? And we offer a couple different versions of spring, like a stiffer one, a softer one, and those are basically, our softer one is good enough for most artists. The heavy duty one is really for people who there's a couple different types of people that it suits. People who run their machine really hard and fast tend to prefer the heavy duty one, or people who use the 4.2 millimeter stroke length cams with a really short throw. So there really just isn't as much tension from the
Mm,
cartridge pushing on the cam to kind of keep it seated. In
right.
those cases, the heavy duty. But the point getting at is that that spring, it lives in the grip, which is it causes complicate a couple of different complications. Number one, it's made us coming up with disposable grips for this machine super challenging, and we have had some ideas as to how to accomplish that by making like a grip, like a disposable grip armature that then you would screw the disposable onto. Um, Still haven't really solved that issue for this particular machine, unfortunately, and that plays into our new design as well, and why we designed it the way that we did. But also, even to just swap out your spring, there's this little tiny groove up here where the spring seats itself into, and a very specific way to install that spring. And basically, if your spring ever comes out, you're probably not going to get it back into that little groove. And of course, you can just drop the spring in and it does the same function. But then if you take your grip off, if you're doing that a lot, then you have to be cautious because the spring wants to fall out, and so you want to take it apart. And it's just it's just not the best user experience, I would say.
Yeah, that is the case with my Numa right now as well. With spring is just sitting in there. I never got it back into the groove.
Yeah, and it still functions that way. But yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
and then the same thing goes with the cam. If I just take it apart like this, my cam's falling out. There's nothing
Mhm.
holding it in. And the purpose for that is so that it's easy to change. You don't need a tool to get it in and out, but it also means you got to be cautious with how you disassemble your machine. And so we wanted to address some of those things as well. Um,
Yeah, that's interesting. The use case that you brought up for the stiffer string spring with using the longer stroke cam, but backing the needle depth way off so that so you're basically like negating a lot of the stroke. I mean, you're not using as much needle like as I assume that you would want to if you were using a 4.2 millimeter stroke.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's preference based, and to me, the only real benefit I can see for doing it that way is you really are extending the delay in the retracted percentage or portion of, especially if you're saying that only if this is your stroke length and only the needle's only coming out this much, then this much of it is technically the retracted portion. And if you're using a 20% 4.2, you also have that delay in the back. So now you're really getting a snap. And so if you really want a snap and you use a short throw anyway, then there is some benefit there, I would say.
Okay.
And I would say probably most beneficial for people who like to do dot work. And so they want a big hesitation between their dots.
Right.
So let's see if I can get my notes here and see if I'm forgetting any of the things that we were trying to address. There's the cartridge receptacle, right? So getting that thing just right has been tricky, right? Because you want it to be tight enough that your cartridge doesn't wobble this way when it's installed, but you also want it to be loose enough so that you can accept all brands of cartridge. And that's been a little bit tricky. So we've figured out a way to accommodate for that.
We've had a couple of talks, I know, about the challenges of just all of the variations in cartridges and not just their shape, but also their the whatever my brain's foggy today. How stiff the membrane or rubber band or whatever it is, and allowing for that, and I'm sure it's got to be such a headache. I basically quit. I had one of the Bishop wands that I haven't used in a long time because a set of cartridges that I bought, literally, if I could get them into the receptacle, like I couldn't twist them back out without pliers. They were they wedged in there so hard that I finally was just like, well, I have a case of these cartridges. I'm just going to use the machine that they fit in for a while.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I remember you talking about that. Yeah, I'm sure there's other people experiencing something similar too. I mean, and unfortunately, I don't think it's an issue that can be perfectly addressed. But yeah, it's one of the things that we were trying to figure out. Besides just addressing that, there is a giant elephant in the room, which comes to batteries, right? We have Critical makes a great battery. Look, we actually sell a cheaper version of the similar kind of thing. It's great and everything, but it doesn't really. First of all, there's an RCA in there. There's an RCA in there, and so you're adding a bunch of extra dimension and length that is not necessary. And like the weight and balance is affected. It's not considered. Like this is designed separately from this, and so you don't really have the two working harmoniously together. So that was another big one that we wanted to get at. And then there is. So basically, now I guess I just have to say that Neuma 5 is the new thing, right? And so we're redesigning the machine entirely. We have redesigned the machine entirely, and we're in production now. So by the time people are seeing this, they'll probably already have heard about it, or at least our followers will have already heard about the Neuma 5. It will have two versions, the wired version and the wireless version, and they're adaptable. So it's like the RCA version is an adapter. Really, it's meant to be a wireless machine. And, so it's designed to be as short as we can get it with as much battery power as we can, offer. Yeah. And still give you the low center of gravity, a good balance point, and all of that, and not like a super heavy, super long machine.
I remember one of our early conversations, you were not a big fan of using batteries at all with this was probably the Gen 1 that we were talking about. I'm sure it was before the macro. you were pushing people to use traditional power supplies, and I guess you just have to, at a certain point, like, okay, people just aren't using them anymore. Everyone's using a battery,
Well,
so
and
it's something that has to be addressed.
yeah, and myself included, like I resisted and I pushed back and I would say that it seems like you're getting better power delivery from, for example, like a Muso Toku power supply plugged into the wall with the 5 amps delivered, guaranteed, and all that. I think there is something to that, but I also think that there's ways to achieve that with, in a wireless configuration. I think Muso Toku has already done that with their what do they call it, the rover, I think, where
Okay.
the power delivery is similar to the way that their power supply is delivering power, and we have achieved that also with ours. I think that there's a combination of electronics and the actual cell that are determining whether or not it's possible. So I was, at the time that you're describing, I was comparing just what I knew as far as batteries go to which ones I was trying out compared to power supply from the wall, not knowing what can be achieved. And by, just by simply using, like, not to knock anybody, but let's say there's low quality manufacturers for batteries and there's high quality manufacturers for batteries. And I think that it seems that the Japanese are known for producing the best batteries that have the best output and the longest life. And so I did a lot of battery research, and along with my electrical engineers, we determined a cell where we can get a consistent delivery of power, similar to the way that you would expect from a power supply. So
Gotcha.
the short answer is, I think I was wrong. I think that I just didn't have enough information. It's not that I was entirely wrong, because it was my experience of it, and so it's not exactly that I wasn't really working with the information at the time.
Do you know, since you have done some battery research now, why it is that batteries can only drop to a certain voltage? Like maybe it's 5, maybe it's 4, but any of the batteries that I like for the Neuma 4 for the macro, I've been using it for some kind of peppered stippling with like either a 3-round shader or a 5-round shader, like a loose small needle configuration. But I have to use the Muso Toku, and I drop it down to like 3.5 volts and move. And I forget, I haven't looked to see what cam is in there. I've been using the same one for a while. I forget what cam I'm using, but either way, I'm getting good results with that. But anything, like, I can't use a battery with it because the batteries will only drop to, say, maybe 4.5 volts, maybe 4, whatever it is. It's a little faster, so I don't get that clean pepper. And I wonder, that seems to be the case whether I'm using the Amazon batteries, the Criticals. I think that's the only ones that I have. But they won't drop to a very low voltage for me, not like a power supply will.
Yeah, that's going to be a question for my engineers. I'll have to ask them. I actually don't know the answer to that. And the way that we designed it is similar. It starts at 4.5. If I were to guess, I would say, because it's sort of like we've talked about in the past, where you kind of have like we've used bandwidth as an analogy, right? Or like CFM or something like that, where a battery just doesn't produce quite as much amperage, and so at those low, that's why you have some of these brands that do like the little spike of power in the beginning just to get it running, and then back off to the chosen voltage.
Right.
Yeah, because it takes a little bit to overcome. So in our case, we're using a 3.7 volt battery and using electronics to ramp that up. So I think that's probably what it is, that it kind of needs to be ramped up in order to achieve the voltages that we're running these motors at.
I see. Okay. Yeah, and I think that's such a specific use case that probably almost no one runs a machine lower than 4.5 volts anyway, so it's probably pretty rare that you would have that as an issue. And if I just hadn't happened to notice, or actually it was the reason I even started running a machine that low was because of Robin Pilata, Ty's wife Robin, that was doing that very beautiful, like soft whipped kind of floral stuff. And I was watching her, I was looking at her voltage and was like, oh wow, she was running at like 2.7 volts, wow. And like moving her hand like anyone else would, and just getting this beautiful little pepper effect. I would have never thought to run a machine that low.
Yeah, that's super low.
But,
Yeah, you know what? I'll ask, but I bet you it's related to that. It's just the overall lower output of the battery.
Right, right. So with the Numa 5, when I look, do you have one yet, or you're not showing it yet, or what's
Not
the
showing it
like
yet.
what will
We're
okay.
There actually is there's a couple little leaks. We've done some intentional leaks. We really want to tell people, but we also don't. I don't like I've never been the type that wants to talk about it long before it's due. And for example, I thought we would be done. I probably told you, oh, we would have it 2 months ago or whatever it was, 3 months ago maybe. And that's just one of the downsides of manufacturing is you never really know how long it might take when you're doing it for the first time. And so,
Right.
but if I were telling people 6, 9 months ago and I really wanted to, then I feel like I would just be causing them to wait unnecessarily. And,
Hmm.
so we've been working on this for
Right.
a pretty long time at this point, but we're super close to complete. I mean, the design is complete. It's been tested thoroughly. We're just manufacturing the parts and assembling. And so the idea is that we'll drop, like we have a couple of ads that are going up middle of this month. So people will start knowing about it then, and we'll probably do like a pre-release, in a few weeks from now, probably by the time this video is going up.
So will it come in a macro and a Modus version as well? Are you going to use both motors or just one?
It'll be just be the original motor,
Okay.
like the N4 and / Modus motor, mostly because it will consume less energy, give you better battery life.
Well, if you don't mind kind of describing, I know you're not showing it yet, but it might gonna outside of I assume the battery on the battery version is built in.
Mm-hmm.
Is there outside of that? Is there going to be like when I'm looking at it? Does it still look like the macro of the Modus? Is it basically the same design?
It's similar, and I think like the design language will be recognizable, but it is quite different. So first of all, like the machine now is divided. So instead of the way that it has been, we have basically you have a grip that's the majority of the machine, and then your adjustment knob thing at the end. Now it's pretty much divided in the middle. So you have a smaller grip in the front. Part of the reason for that is to make disposables easier to manufacture, and that's something that we'll be releasing shortly afterwards.
Okay.
Also, we're removing the spring from the grip, so we're able. The grip is a big part of the change, but I guess getting back to your question is, it will look similar to a normal Neuma, but it will be kind of a lot different too. So what we're doing is we're dividing in the middle. So the grip is one half of it, and then you have battery or the RCA adapter here, and basically in the middle there's a little strip where you would do your adjustment, and then there's an O-ring in that area as well. So we're bringing the bagging to the external portion of the machine rather than bringing the bag into the grip. We're basically putting a big fat O-ring right in the middle of the machine that you can use to bag either your battery or cord if you're using the RCA version. But
Okay.
like I said, the design language is similar. I think people will still see it as a Neuma, but it's pretty different. Yeah, it's got a big OLED display on it, and then so we're calling it's Neuma 5 technically, but we're calling the wired version Neuma 5, and we're calling the wireless version Neuma Play. And the reason for that is because while designing it, I was kind of toying with different button shapes because there's going to be buttons on it, right, to turn it on and off and adjust the voltage. I ended up choosing to do a play button shape instead of like an on-off, like play pause kind of a button instead, and that was the original thought. And then I kind of really got attached to that and started thinking like, yeah, we play for a living. This is a fun for us. This isn't so much a job. And so I really liked that play button, and it really just started, I think it named itself in a way,
Right.
So it's
right,
Neuma 5 Play. They are the same machine. It's just, does it use a battery or does it use an RCA? And no matter which way you buy it, you can convert it to the other one. It's a magnetic
Okay,
interface, and then so yeah, the battery pack it's a battery pack that is removable, so you can have multiple battery packs instead of like replacing cells. I thought about doing it as a cell, but it just complicated the design a lot, and I really just wanted a nice, stable, reliable design. You know.
Right. What about with the cam system? Anything changing
Yep.
with it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big one because of all of our repairs that we get back, I would say it's somewhere about maybe 1.5% of machines come back for repairs, and of those, 90 something percent are because of that little pin that we were talking about. So what happens is there's pressure being put on that pin, and just sometimes it fails and pops out, or breaks, or bends, and causes extra friction, stuff like that. So the new cam, actually, I have one sitting right here. So this is the new cam, and let's see, I had another one a second ago. Here it is. The desk is a little messy. So if you look at these two side by side, you can see this is the old one, this is the new one, and as you can tell, the teeth size is dramatically different. It's ultimately the same thing. We've redesigned the top to get a little bit better stability here, but you can see like the tooth size is something like quadruple the size of the old one. The purpose for that is for bigger pin. So what we ended up doing, we doubled the size of the diameter of the pin, and then we designed a tool to precision press fit those in. We also redesigned the inner housing that those pins go into, so that there's a little ledge that meets the tip of the pins, so that there's a nice spot right there to do the welding, and it's not trying to weld two round things to each other. Instead, we're welding the flat surface of the pin to the flat surface of this little ledge that we designed. But by doubling the diameter of the pin size, we actually get 4 times the surface area that is like purchasing with the hole that it's going into. So it's like more than quadruple redundant per pin. Then it's quadruple welded in there for additional redundancy, though I don't think it will need it because we tested it without it and it's super strong. And then we also have second pins, so there's now 2 pins in where there used to be 1, and they're precision press fit so that no matter what, they're in the exact spot that they need to be, and they can't bend out of position. But in a worst case scenario, if one of your pins were to fail, there's a backup one, and this machine would still function the same way. Though I really don't see that happening because we went overboard with this, because like I said, that was the predominant cause for failure in these machines has been that pin. So I'm really excited about that. Also,
And it's
sorry.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that now what we're doing is I have some of these parts printed here that I can show you. So
Okay.
before I was describing how the spring lives in the grip, and it's kind of like held in there by that little groove, which has kind of been frustrating. So the way that we're doing it now, if this is your cam, spring fits on the cam like this. This is a printed part. This would be steel, because we were also moving the weight further down into your hand by making this steel. The spring fits into that area, and then this steel cap, it quarter turn screws onto the inner housing rather than into the grip, so that you basically have the spring this close to the cap that close to the cam. This cap acts as a spring retainer, but also it isolates the mechanism side with oil and moving parts and everything from the cartridge side, which has ink and whatever other fluids that may get in there. So rather than having what has been described as kind of an open transmission, where you look into and it's just a big hole that goes straight in. Now it's got a much smaller hole that's basically the size of a plunger, so it separates the two sides a lot better that way. And then
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that, I remember you talking about that the potential for that solution, or talking about that issue in a previous podcast. Yeah.
yeah, so we finally sorted that out, and that's working really well. And then again, like if you want to swap that spring out, all you do is you remove this, you remove the spring, put in the new one, put the cap back on, and instead of having to have this floating thing in the machine, you won't have that issue anymore. And then you can also just take the grip off, and that cap is holding in the spring and the cam. There's no potential for anything like getting lost, falling on the floor, and that kind of thing.
Right, right. How would someone recognize that they would benefit from the stiffer spring? Is it just like chatter and noise in
Yeah,
the cartridge when it's
it'll
running?
feel
Yeah.
yeah chatter. It'll feel a little bit like loose.
Okay. I haven't experienced that, so I must be good with the
Yeah,
traditional
I
spring,
would
the
say
softer
at
spring.
least 90% of people are maybe more are better off using the standard spring. It also the you know if you don't need the heavy duty spring, you're better off as well because you're putting less friction on the motor, and so the motor's life will be longer.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the cam redesign. There is also one other thing that isn't technically a cam design thing, but one thing that I did a long time ago that I didn't really tell anybody about. I may have told you about this in not in secret, but between you and I, is that
Hmm.
the way that we are achieving the different stroke profiles is this little ramp here, right, where the bearing is
Right.
riding along that, and that is causing this thing to push the needle. And that the shape, or what we call the waveform or stroke profile of that ramp, has been varied between the different cams in order to achieve different results. So on two of them, the 20 and the 40%, it's a symmetrical waveform, and on the 28 and 33%, it's asymmetrical. So in other words, on this half of the ramp, like on the extension of the needle, is one shape, and on the retraction of the needle is a different shape. Um, and so what I didn't mention to the world at the time was that there was a purpose for that, and it's just that I never got around to figuring out how to achieve it until now. So with using the battery version, the play, there, so the play button, it doubles as a directional reverse button as well. So it's on off, and then with a long press, so like press and hold for 2 seconds, what it'll do is shut the motor off momentarily and turn it back on in reverse. And the purpose for that is now these 28 and 33 with the asymmetrical stroke profile now become dual purpose. So you have, for example, with the 33, you'll have it's basically the 40 on one side and the 20 on the other side. We called it the 33. That's just what we called it because we're estimating the amount of time based on our tests that it spends in the extended position of its cycle. But if you reverse it, it'll hit harder like a liner, and if you reverse it and then it'll hit more like the 33 that you're used to, or the 40. And then with the 28, it'll be kind of like hard liner, soft liner, or hard liner,
Gotcha.
shader kind of thing. So by pushing a button, you transform the machine from liner to shader, or liner to even packer, or what we've been calling the blender. The
Yeah.
33 is what we've been calling the blender, but it's very similar to the 40 in that in the extension, it's just a quick retraction. Um, and there's definitely,
Right.
it's noticeable to switch between the 33 and the 40 even, but now you can do it kind of on the fly and just like press a button. And so we're pretty excited about that.
That's super cool. Yeah, you did mention that to me off camera. I think the last time that we talked, that was a possibility or in the works, and I'm excited to check that out. So will it affect the number of total cams that are available? Will it still be the four? We still buy the four different profiles and then the four different.
We're still kind of trying to figure that out. I think at initial launch, we're probably going to offer it with two, because basically you'll get three profiles with 2 cams. Um, and we're going to kind of see what people think. If people are dying for that, missing the 40, or actually realistically, it may end up being 3, because I like the idea of the 28 being basically a hard liner, soft liner, depending on what kind of lining you are trying to do. But I do want to get some feedback from people. And that reminds me, one other thing that we are going to do is we have been molding our cams, and what I decided was that we're gonna CNC these cams, and mostly we were molding cams because as the quantities grow, it's really difficult to keep up with the CNC. So, but if we just take on more machines, then we'll be able to keep up with it. And I think that one of the things in the learning curve for us was that the CNC versions, they just last a lot longer. They're a little bit quieter. They're just better in general. And I think because it's part of the mechanism, it's worth spending the extra money and taking the extra time to, just make those parts as solid as we possibly can.
With the Gen 1, you originally were CNCing,
Yeah.
right? You were doing it, yeah. Because I think one of our early conversations, I thought maybe they were being 3D printed, and you were talking about the density or how hard the material was, and that you were having to machine them. And then, of course, you went through the different types of materials and had issues with one material and had to move to another and all that. So during that period of time, had you switched over and started molding them, or when did that? Okay.
Yeah, so the very first ones were CNC, and those ones are still the strongest ones we ever made. And so, I wanted to be able to, I want to keep that strong. If that's going to be a point of high friction and wear point, then it may as well make them last a lot longer.
Sure. Yeah. Any updates on the on the way that you identify them, the marks? I know you had switched from, you had like the dots and the slashes and things like that told what they were, but I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me. Why they reached out to me instead of you, I have no idea. But how many people have reached out to me and said, hey, how do I know what does the 3 dots mean? Or, whatever, how do I know which one is which?
Yeah, that's a good question, because now going back to CNC, that was one of the benefits of the mold, is putting the marking on in that way. But what I think we'll probably do is laser mark them. So I actually don't know just yet.
Gotcha.
But we'll be most likely laser marking, and I would say the 2 options are either on this like cone area or on the bottom where they are now.
Gotcha.
That's a good question.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's just one of when it's probably why I ended up kind of not for a while. I was experimenting with cams, trying different ones, and now, like I said, I don't know which one is even in the macro. It's the one that I use all the time, and I just know how it runs. I know when I put it in, I knew what it was, but I don't even open it anymore because it's just kind of what I've gotten used to, and for what I'm mostly using the machine for. But yeah, I remember because some of those markings were faint enough that I had like my readers. I'm looking through my bifocal trying to find is that a slash, or did I just scuff that? I can't tell. Yeah, that's exciting. So you still don't have as of right now, you don't have like an official release date.
Not an official release date. So the plan is, and so it's not official at all, but the plan is, we're in production right now, and we're going to do like a soft launch in about 3 weeks from today. And that will be like pre-orders, and some of those will be, I would say, shipping roughly mid-October. So we'll start taking orders mid-September, start shipping mid-ish October. And then we'll be, we'll be in production that whole time. We're not really putting any delay or hesitation on that. It's just a matter of completing those and getting them assembled and shipped and everything. So I would say an official launch date is probably late October.
Okay. So if we were to go through, if we hit all the kind of main points, the big things that people are going to notice, first off, the ability to multi-purpose the cam and have basically 2 different setups based on the push of a button without physically changing a cam, of battery power versus RCA versions, which will be interchanged. So if you buy the battery and decide you want the RCA, you're able to buy the piece to convert it. And then I don't know how many people have noticed issues with the spring. I don't take it. I don't, even though mine will fall out if I turn it upside down. I just know how to do it. But that's been addressed.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a huge concern for people, but I want the user experience to be improved. Obviously, we want to be wireless. I think everybody really will appreciate being wireless. The component, the electronics are designed and made in America. The screen is made in America. The batteries are Japanese made. The motors still fall, however, made in Germany. So the best possible components that we can come up with. The cams will be CNC made and extra durable. Now the teeth are 4 times the size. The pin is twice the diameter and 4 times the purchase area. Quadruple welded and 2 pins, precision press fit. So basically robust as we can possibly make it. We'll have the ability to do disposable grips finally. We'll have the external O-ring to make bagging a little bit easier for people. And the dual purpose cams, which at the push of a button will transform it from either liner to shader or like a hard liner to soft liner or something like that. And then the other cool thing about that is on the 20, for example, the liner, you're going to double your lifespan of those cams, because now if you start to wear out one side of the ramp, you can reverse it and use the other side of the ramp, get the same effect and double the lifespan. So, and we're already expecting to get double the lifespan out of these cams versus the original ones. So we used to give people a lifespan of 1,000 hours on the original cams. This will be able to tell people at least 2,000, and then if you reverse it, you can double that as well. So you're getting a lot more life out of these machines, and you can depend on them a lot more. There's a lot less, points of failure and potential for failure and that kind of thing. And then also the isolation of the mechanism, or like the transfer case from the cartridge side, which is, I think it's more of a safety issue than anything. And then when you are taking your grips off, not having to think about whether or not any parts are going to come out,
Hey, thanks so much to Carson for taking the time out to share his brain with us. Thank you for taking the time to watch and for your support of the Fireside Tattoo Network. Please, again, check out the Inside Fireside Tattoo Club. If you're a beginning tattooer or an apprentice, check out our Foundations course. It is a drawing-focused course specifically for beginning tattooers. Or if you're a higher-level tattooer, we have Fireside Simplify, which will help you evolve into a large-scale tattooer, really develop and define your mark making later in your tattoo career. Okay, enough salesy stuff. Thank you for supporting the Fireside Tattoo Network, and I'll catch you next time.